clinic. I'm a reenactor. And that means I try to bring the past to life. Usually it's in the company of other people. But I also use this for 36 years in the classroom to try to bring history to life and hook my students into a subject that many of them felt was as dead as the people we were studying. And to that end, I would wear the garb for the time period, which means over 36 years, I have an entire room at the house filled with garb, and it's like bursting. I used my passion for bringing the past to life to get them fired up, and I also tried to preserve the past as much as I could and talk about landmarks that are going away. Well, here I am. I don't have a classroom anymore, but I still have that room full of garb I mentioned. I have that passion for bringing the past to life. I have that desire to play history detective and amateur anthropologist and amateur archaeologist. And I want to preserve the landmarks before they go away. So what I'm doing right now is I'm in a very pretentious sounding Mission Odyssey, where I intend to visit each of the missions in Alta California, each of the Asistencias. Those are spin-off missions intended to become full-fledged missions. Each of the estancias that I could find that haven't been paved over, those are the ranchos that were designed to support the missions. Each of the presidios, those were the fortifications designed to, protect the missions. And I want to do it in garb to tell the story better of each of these places and to create a visual record. So what I'm doing today is I'm heading back to Mission San Juan Bautista because I had too much stuff. So I hope you'll stick with me on my journey. In 1805, the Indian population stood at 1,100. By 1812, when the church was dedicated, death and desertions had reduced the number by more than half. The great new edifice dwarfed the attending congregations, and after the December 1812 earthquake, or earthquakes, which caused damage to almost all the missions, and the earthquake destroyed the archways which separate the center from the side aisles, Padre de la Cuesta walled in the 2 rows of arches which separated the 3 naves of the church, and except for the area near the altar, the church interior then resembled all other mission churches, with the 2 outside naves forming large separate rooms. This also made the structure more sound during earthquakes. Also in 1812, Padre Esteban Tapis, who had been serving as the Father Presidente of the mission chain since the death of Padre Lasso in 1803, retired from the office and joined Padre de la Cuesta at San Juan Bautista. The mission gained a highly regarded reputation for the quality of neophyte education, and Padre Tapis's diplomacy in dealing with government officials and military officers living in San Juan Bautista came in handy. Like Padre Duran at Mission San Jose and later Mission Santa Barbara, he had a special talent for music, and it was he who did so much to develop choral singing amongst the neophytes, using colored notes to identify the various vocal parts on the sheet music. Padre de la Cuesta was still in charge. He served as head padre for 25 years. He was a self-sacrificing missionary, inspired leader, a scholar, a linguist, ingenious inventor, clockmaker, a talented singer and composer. and he struggled through despite a crippling long-term illness. He knew more than a dozen Indian languages, was able to preach in 7 of them, and in 1815 published a dictionary-like study of the various native languages at the mission. Better educated than the majority of his peers, he took pleasure in endowing his newborn charges with names borrowed from the past. In this connection, Alfred Robinson, an American hide dealer who visited San Juan, related that the place abounded in infant Platos, Ciceros, and Alexanders. In 1816, a Boston sailor named Thomas Doak jumped ship in Monterey. And in 1820, he showed up here at Mission San Juan Bautista, and in exchange for room and board, he painted the interior of the mission and many of the buildings. Doak, the new Spanish citizen, taking up permanent residence at San Juan Bautista, probably painted and constructed the main altar redodos, the altar screen, after a design by Padre Tapis, and embellished the interior walls in exchange for room and board. The main altar redodos and bultos, the sculptures of the saints, remain largely unrestored to this day. And if you take a close look at the tiles on the floor, some of them have paw prints of animals who walked on them while they were drying. In 1821, after a decade of struggle, Mexico achieved its independence from Spain, and this would create a different situation for the missions. In 1824, there was a big increase in the population of Mission San Juan Bautista. There was a really large influx of what I would call refugees, because there was a lot of military activity that the Mexican government was conducting in the Tulare Valley. And so you have a whole bunch of native Californians who have showed up to join the mission. Now, in 1826, we're going to see an increase in these expeditions. And the expeditions that the Spanish were having and now the Mexicans are having, they're not interested in the idea of setting up new missions in the interior. These expeditions are about recapturing runaway neophytes and recapturing stolen horses and intimidating the tribes and basically presenting a show of force. And one of the people involved in these expeditions was a man named Jose Dolores Pico. In 1815, he'd been involved in an expedition that left Monterey and cruised through San Juan Bautista, and it eventually connected with an expedition by a man named Ortega, and they traveled around the fringes of Tulare Lake, and to a rancheria, a village named Bubal. And again, people were captured and taken back to be educated, and some were killed and others were intimidated and livestock recovered. Well, now 1826, the same thing is happening, only now Pico is working for the Mexican government. And the expedition launched from Monterey. It stopped and it got its act together at Mission San Juan Bautista, and it went east into the San Joaquin Valley, and it ended up around the Kings River and eventually at Tulare Lake and at Bubal, and eventually made it to Mission San Miguel, and the same sorts of things were reported. Yay, look, we recovered runaway neophytes. Look, we got back these horses that were stolen. And yes, we killed some of the Yokuts and intimidated the local tribes. 2 years later, another soldado named Sebastian Rodriguez, he is going to launch an expedition from Mission San Juan Bautista, and he's just gonna basically cruise east, go into the valley, and accomplish the same things, and then turn around. So the idea of going out to perform missionary work has kind of taken a back seat. Now it's turning to intimidation and recapturing the increasing number of runaways. So, what are these neophytes doing that have been brought to the mission or who have chosen to arrive at the mission? Besides building the mission and building some of the buildings, they are being taught skills that would make them considered good productive citizens in the Spanish world and now the Mexican world. So things like candle making and soap making and leather work and raising cattle. The Padres reported that wages paid to the Indians for skilled services included 4 reales a day for woodcutters, 3 reales for sawyers, and 1.5 reales for laborers. If accurate, that would be different from other missions where neophytes might get paid by rancheros for labor, but money would be paid to the Padres. The laborers would then be paid in goods. Like most other missions, San Juan Bautista raised wheat, barley, corn, beans, and peas, and between 1798 and 1832 raised over 90,000 bushels worth. The mission vineyard, a mile southeast of the church, grew grapes for wine production. As to livestock, a thriving trade center for hides, tallow, and farm products sprung up around the mission. The number of the mission-owned animals continued to grow in numbers, raised on various lands assigned to the mission. To the southeast and northeast of the mission, on low hills and plains, the Indians tended 6,500 head of cattle, 500 mares, 250 tame and broken horses, and 37 mules. To the east, they maintained a rancho for the mission sheep. To the northeast, a rancho was maintained for mission livestock. To the northeast, another rancho was kept, where stock grazed on small plains and low hills near springs. No irrigation was practiced on any of these mission ranchos. To the northeast, lying 3 leagues from the mission and El Camino Real, the mission held a rancho on the sides of high mountains for sheep with pasturage, watered by the overflow of El Rio de Pajaro. In the center of these mountains were found deposits of pitch and sulfur, as well as sulfurous hot and cold springs. The mission obtained good timber from this area as well. Okay, looks like Mission San Juan Bautista wanted me to come back because it had too much information to stick into 1 or 2 videos. So I'm on my way back. All right, stick with me.